Most men don't realize when they lose power. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, quietly. The moment you start proving instead of choosing, you answer faster than you should. You tolerate inconsistency. You adjust your standards to keep access. And without noticing it, you stop acting like the prize and start behaving like an option. Stoicism teaches a truth that makes many men uncomfortable. The one who chases approval has already surrendered leverage, not because he lacks value, but because he forgot where it comes from. You were never meant to audition for attention. You were never meant to negotiate respect. And you were never meant to stay where your presence is convenient, but your value is optional. When a woman treats you like an option, it is rarely because she is powerful. It is because you stopped acting as if you were. Attraction does not collapse when a man is imperfect. It collapses when a man becomes available without standards. The moment you allow inconsistency without consequence, something shifts. Your time becomes abundant. Your attention becomes predictable. And predictability destroys polarity. Stoicism is not about arrogance. It is about self-command. A Stoic man understands that his value does not come from how much he gives, but from how selectively he gives it. He does not need to remind anyone he is the prize. His behavior makes it obvious. When you stop centering your decisions around her reactions, her treatment changes. When you stop rewarding mixed signals with effort, clarity appears. And when you stop staying where you are optional, respect either rises or the connection ends. Both outcomes are wins. Most men stay because they hope effort will change behavior. But effort without boundaries trains people how to treat you, and what you tolerate becomes the role you are assigned. This video is not about controlling women. It is not about games, and it is not about ego. It is about remembering a simple Stoic principle. You do not demand respect. You require alignment. By the end of this video, you will understand why being the prize is a mindset, not a slogan. Why options are created by over-availability, and why walking away early is the ultimate form of power. If you have ever felt like you were giving more than you were receiving, stay with me, because once you internalize this truth, you stop chasing validation and start commanding your position. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below, join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section number 1, why you lose prize status. The moment you overinvest, a man does not lose his value because a woman decides he is unworthy. He loses it the moment his behavior begins revolving around her reactions instead of his own standards. Stoicism teaches that value is not something granted externally. It is something maintained internally through discipline, restraint, and self-respect. When you overinvest emotionally, time-wise, or mentally without reciprocity, you quietly announce that your life has paused to accommodate her interest, and the dynamic shifts immediately. Most men believe overinvestment proves seriousness, maturity, or emotional strength. In reality, it signals misalignment. When you give more than is being returned, you collapse polarity. Your attention becomes predictable. Your availability becomes assumed, and your presence becomes easy to replace. Attraction does not respond to effort. It responds to contrast. And overinvestment removes contrast completely. A Stoic man understands that interest should never require persuasion. When you find yourself explaining your intentions, justifying your patience, or tolerating inconsistency to keep access, you are no longer choosing. You are waiting. And waiting places you beneath the dynamic instead of within it. The prize is never the one waiting to be selected. Overinvestment also erodes your internal posture. You begin checking your phone more often. You adjust your schedule instinctively. You suppress standards to avoid conflict. Each adjustment feels small, but together they train your nervous system to associate peace with her approval. That is the exact opposite of stoic independence. When your calm depends on her response, leverage is gone. Stoicism teaches that discipline creates attraction because it communicates self-command. A man who invests selectively sends a clear signal. His time is valuable, his attention is intentional, and access to him is earned through alignment, not assumed through availability. This does not require arrogance or coldness, it requires boundaries. Most men do not realize they are being treated like options because nothing overtly disrespectful happens at first. She still responds, she still engages, she still enjoys the benefits of your presence, but she no longer adjusts for you. She no longer prioritizes you. And because you keep showing up regardless, the dynamic solidifies quietly. The prize is not the man who gives the most. The prize is the man who gives in proportion. When investment is balanced, attraction grows. When it is one-sided, respect fades. And once respect fades, effort becomes invisible. A stoic man notices imbalance early and corrects it without drama. He does not argue for his value. He withdraws excess investment and returns to his center. If alignment returns, the connection continues. If it does not, he walks away without resentment. That is how prize status is maintained, not by demanding respect, but by never abandoning self-respect in the first place. Section number 2, why being too available destroys attraction. One of the fastest ways a man turns himself into an option is by making his availability unlimited. Stoicism teaches that what is always accessible is rarely respected, not because people are cruel, but because human psychology assigns value based on scarcity and intention. When your time, attention, and emotional energy are always open, they lose weight. You may believe you are showing consistency, but what you are actually communicating is that nothing else in your life competes with her presence. Most men confuse availability with reliability. Reliability is attractive because it signals stability. Availability without structure signals dependency. When a woman senses that you will always answer, always adjust, always show up regardless of how she treats you, the dynamic quietly shifts. She no longer feels chosen by you. She feels accommodated by you. And accommodation kills polarity. A stoic man understands that availability must be governed by purpose. His life is already full before anyone enters it. Work, discipline, growth, and direction give his time meaning. When he makes space for a woman, it is intentional, not automatic. This intentionality creates contrast. It communicates that access to him is a privilege, not an entitlement. When you become too available, you remove uncertainty. She knows where you are emotionally. She knows you will be there. She knows she does not need to adjust her behavior to keep you engaged. And once certainty replaces curiosity, attraction begins to fade. Stoicism teaches that curiosity is born where control ends. When she controls access to you, curiosity disappears. Most men are afraid to reduce availability because they fear losing connection. But connection that depends on constant access is not connection. It is attachment without respect. A woman who is genuinely interested does not need constant availability to stay engaged. She responds to presence that is grounded and intentional. Being less available is not a tactic. It is a reflection of a life that does not revolve around romantic validation. When you stop reorganizing your schedule around her reactions, something powerful happens. Either she adjusts and meets you at your level, or she fades away. Both outcomes reveal truth, and truth restores power. Stoicism teaches that you do not compete for attention. You offer presence where alignment exists. When alignment is missing, you redirect energy without resentment. A man who understands his worth does not fear absence. He understands that absence is sometimes the only language clarity understands. The prize is never the man who is always available. The prize is the man whose presence feels chosen, not assumed. When you reclaim your time and attention, you reclaim your position in the dynamic. And once your availability has structure again, attraction either returns or reveals that it was never there to begin with. Section number 3, why tolerating disrespect turns you into an option. A man does not become an option because a woman suddenly loses interest. He becomes an option the moment he tolerates behavior that contradicts his standards. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not something you announce. It is something you demonstrate through what you accept and what you refuse. When you allow inconsistency, broken promises, dismissive behavior, or emotional negligence to pass without consequence, you silently communicate that access to you does not require respect. Most men misunderstand this principle because they equate tolerance with maturity. They believe staying calm, patient, and understanding will eventually be rewarded with appreciation. But Stoicism makes a clear distinction between emotional control and self-abandonment. Emotional control means you do not react impulsively. Self-abandonment means you stay where your values are violated to avoid discomfort. One builds strength, the other erodes it. Disrespect rarely arrives loudly. It appears in small patterns. Plans are canceled casually. Your time is treated as flexible. Your concerns are minimized. Your boundaries are brushed aside. Each moment feels insignificant on its own, but together they form a message. And the message is simple. You are available without consequence. A Stoic man understands that respect is maintained through alignment, not confrontation. He does not lecture. He does not argue. He does not threaten. He adjusts his presence. When behavior drops, access reduces. When standards are ignored, investment withdraws. This is not punishment, it is coherence. Your actions must match your values, or your values become empty words. Most men become options because they fear loss more than misalignment. They think speaking up or pulling back will push her away, but attraction cannot survive without respect, and respect cannot survive without boundaries. If asserting standards ends the connection was already hollow. Stoicism teaches that dignity is preserved through quiet firmness. You do not need to explain why certain behavior is unacceptable. You simply stop rewarding it with your presence. A woman who values you will notice the shift and correct course. A woman who does not will drift away. Both outcomes protect your position. When you tolerate disrespect, you train others how to treat you. And once that training is complete, reversing it becomes difficult. The earlier you respond through action, the less damage is done. This is why Stoicism emphasizes early correction rather than late confrontation. The prize is never the man who endures poor treatment to prove emotional strength. The prize is the man who remains aligned with himself even when walking away is uncomfortable. Respect follows consistency of standards, not emotional endurance. When you stop tolerating what diminishes you, you stop being an option automatically, not because you demanded better treatment, but because you refused to participate in dynamics that required you to shrink. That is how a Stoic man maintains his position. Section number 4, why seeking validation destroys your position. A man stops being the prize the moment he begins seeking validation instead of offering presence. Stoicism teaches that approval seeking shifts power immediately because the one who seeks confirmation places himself beneath the one who grants it. Validation is not inherently wrong, but when it becomes a requirement for emotional stability, it quietly dismantles attraction and replaces it with dependence. Most men do not realize they are seeking validation because it does not look dramatic. It looks like checking for reassurance. It looks like fishing for compliments. It looks like needing consistent confirmation that things are okay. Each behavior feels harmless, but together they signal uncertainty. And uncertainty in oneself creates certainty in the other person that they hold leverage. A Stoic man does not need to be constantly affirmed to remain grounded. His sense of worth is not outsourced. When you begin measuring your value through her reactions, replies, tone, or availability, you give away the frame. You begin adjusting yourself emotionally to maintain her approval. And once that happens, the dynamic no longer feels equal. You are performing rather than choosing. Validation seeking also removes mystery. When your emotional state is transparent and dependent, there is nothing left to discover. Stoicism teaches that attraction thrives where inner life is ordered but not exposed prematurely. When everything about you is oriented toward being liked, curiosity collapses. Curiosity is replaced by predictability, and predictability makes you easy to deprioritize. Most men fear that withholding validation seeking will make them seem distant or uncaring. In reality, it makes them feel self-contained. A woman does not feel pressure to reassure a man who is already at peace. That peace creates space for her to lean in naturally rather than manage your emotions. A stoic man offers appreciation when it aligns with his values, not when he needs reassurance in return. His compliments are deliberate, not compensatory. His presence is stable whether or not it is mirrored. This creates polarity because emotional steadiness is rare, and rarity commands attention. When you stop seeking validation, something shifts immediately. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of interpret. You engage without attaching your emotional balance to outcomes. This does not make you cold, it makes you grounded. And grounding is attractive because it signals inner order. The prize is never the man asking to be chosen. The prize is the man who is already complete, who invites connection rather than begs for confirmation. When validation is no longer your fuel, you regain control of your emotional state and your position in the dynamic. Stoicism teaches that freedom begins where approval seeking ends, and the moment you stop needing to be validated, you stop being treated like an option. Section number 5. Why you must be willing to walk away to remain the prize. A man is only treated like the prize when he is genuinely willing to walk away. Stoicism teaches that freedom is the root of power, and power disappears the moment attachment outweighs self-respect. When a woman senses that you will stay regardless of how you are treated, the dynamic tilts immediately, not because she intends to disrespect you, but because there is no longer any risk in doing so. Most men believe walking away is an act of ego or punishment. In truth, it is an act of alignment. When you are unwilling to leave a situation that diminishes you, you communicate that your standards are flexible under pressure. And once standards bend, attraction weakens. The prize is never the man who stays at all costs. The prize is the man who stays by choice and leaves by principle. Stoicism emphasizes that attachment to outcomes clouds judgment. When you need a specific result, approval, commitment, reassurance, or exclusivity, you begin compromising internally. You tolerate behavior you would otherwise reject. You explain away red flags. You delay action. All of this signals that you fear loss more than misalignment, and fear dissolves authority. A stoic man understands that walking away is not a threat. It is a boundary enforced through action. He does not announce it. He does not dramatize it. He simply removes himself when alignment is missing. This quiet certainty is deeply powerful because it reveals that his emotional stability does not depend on staying. When a woman senses that you are comfortable with loss, something shifts. She either rises to meet your standards or disengages. Both outcomes protect your position. What never works is staying while hoping behavior will improve. Hope without action teaches others that your presence is unconditional, and unconditional presence removes urgency and respect. Most men stay because they believe walking away ends opportunity. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Staying where you are undervalued ends opportunity. Walking away preserves it. The moment you demonstrate that your life continues regardless of the outcome, you reclaim leverage without force. Being willing to walk away does not mean you want to leave. It means you do not fear leaving, and fearlessness changes everything. Your tone shifts. Your decisions slow down. Your investment becomes measured. You stop negotiating for attention and start observing behavior. That shift alone often changes how you are treated. The prize is not the man who is hard to get. The prize is the man who is impossible to keep without alignment. When your presence requires respect, consistency, and reciprocity, it becomes valuable. When it is freely available regardless of conditions, it becomes optional. Stoicism teaches that dignity is preserved through self-command. Walking away is not rejection of another person. It is loyalty to yourself. And the man who is loyal to himself never loses his position because his worth does not depend on being chosen. That is why the willingness to walk away is not a tactic. It is the foundation of being the prize. Section number 6, why you must stop centering her and start centering your life. A man stops being the prize the moment his life begins orbiting around a woman instead of purpose, discipline, and direction. Stoicism teaches that attraction follows gravity, and gravity is created by a life that is already moving forward. When you center her reactions, moods, and availability, you quietly shrink your world. And when your world shrinks, so does your perceived value. Most men do this without noticing. They check their phone first thing in the morning. They delay plans waiting for replies. They adjust priorities to remain emotionally accessible. None of these actions feel dramatic, but together they communicate that she is the axis around which your emotional state rotates. The prize never revolves. The prize is revolved around. A stoic man understands that his life must be full before anyone enters it. Work, physical discipline, learning, friendships, and long-term purpose give his days structure and meaning. When a woman joins that life, she is an addition, not the foundation. This posture changes everything. Your availability becomes intentional. Your attention becomes selective. Your presence becomes grounded. When you stop centering her, you stop reacting emotionally to fluctuations. If she is distant, you continue forward. If she is warm, you engage without attachment. If she pulls away, you do not chase. This emotional independence creates stability, and stability is deeply attractive because it signals inner order. Stoicism teaches that inner order is rare, and rarity commands respect. Most men fear that centering their own lives will make them seem indifferent or uncaring. In reality, it makes them feel secure. A woman does not want to manage a man's emotional balance. She wants to join a life that is already balanced. When your peace does not depend on her presence, connection becomes a choice, not a responsibility. Centering your life also restores clarity. You stop overanalyzing signals because your attention is no longer idle. You stop seeking validation because your progress gives you feedback. You stop tolerating misalignment because your standards are supported by momentum. A man with direction does not cling, he evaluates. Stoicism teaches that desire grows where freedom exists. When your life is rich, movement is constant, and purpose is clear, you are free to choose connection without needing it. That freedom is felt immediately. It removes pressure from interaction and replaces it with calm confidence. The prize is not the man who makes a woman feel central. The prize is the man whose life feels solid enough to invite her into without depending on her to complete it. When you center your life, you become unshakable, and what is unshakable cannot be treated as optional. This is why centering your life is not self-centeredness. It is self-command, and self-command is the foundation upon which all lasting attraction is built. Section number 7, why reclaiming your frame makes everything shift. A man becomes the prize again the moment he reclaims his frame. Stoicism teaches that every interaction operates within a frame, the emotional and psychological structure that defines who leads, who reacts, and whose reality dominates the dynamic. When you allow her moods, availability, or approval to dictate your behavior, you are living inside her frame, and inside her frame, you are always an option. Most men do not realize they have lost their frame because it does not feel like submission. It feels like flexibility. It feels like compromise. It feels like being easygoing. But over time, flexibility without limits becomes self-eraser. You stop asserting your pace. You stop expressing preferences. You stop leading the emotional direction. And once leadership is gone, attraction weakens. A stoic man understands that frame is not maintained through dominance or control, but through consistency of self. He does not bend his values to keep access. He does not reshape his identity to maintain interest. He shows up as the same man whether she is present or absent, warm or distant. That consistency creates gravity because it signals inner alignment. When you reclaim your frame, your behavior changes naturally. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying decisions. You stop seeking permission to act in your own best interest. Your responses slow down, not to create mystery, but because urgency is no longer driving you. And when urgency disappears, power returns. Most men fear that reclaiming their frame will cause conflict or distance. Stoicism teaches that conflict is not the enemy of attraction. Inauthenticity is. When you live outside your frame to avoid discomfort, you may preserve access temporarily, but you lose respect permanently. Respect cannot exist where self-betrayal is present. Reclaiming your frame also clarifies outcomes quickly. When you lead with self-command, one of two things happens. She adjusts and meets you with respect, or she fades away. Both outcomes are wins. One restores alignment, the other removes illusion. What never happens is continued confusion, because clarity thrives inside a strong frame. A stoic man does not argue for his position. He lives it. He does not announce boundaries. He embodies them. He does not chase compliance. He allows behavior to reveal alignment. This quiet authority is what transforms how you are perceived because it shifts the dynamic from negotiation to choice. When your frame is intact, you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are evaluating. You are no longer reacting emotionally to inconsistency. You are observing. You are no longer afraid of loss because your identity is not anchored to outcome. That internal posture is what makes you unmistakably the prize. Stoicism teaches that the highest power is self-governance. When you govern your reactions, your standards, and your direction, you automatically lead the dynamic. And when you lead the dynamic without force, others either follow willingly or fall away. The prize is not a role you claim. It is a position you hold by remaining aligned with yourself. The moment your frame is restored, everything else rearranges naturally around it. In short, what everything you've heard comes down to is not technique, timing, or trying harder. It comes down to identity. Stoicism teaches that a man does not become the prize by convincing others of his worth, but by refusing to abandon it. The moment you stopped acting from fear of loss and started acting from alignment, the entire dynamic shifted. You were never treated like an option because you lacked value. You were treated like an option because your behavior slowly communicated that your presence was negotiable. Overinvestment, over-availability, tolerance of disrespect, validation seeking, fear of walking away, and centering her above your life all pointed to the same message. Your standards were flexible, and where standards are flexible, respect fades.